described the west 65 feet of the north 90 feet of Lot 1 on 9th Street, Holland Addition. The City of Salina designated the structure as a Heritage Conservation District property in 1997 due to its architectural significance. This item was continued from the July 27th, 2016 Heritage Commission meeting. And at this point, I'm going to let John take it over.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. The residence of this address is located at the corner of South Street and 9th Street. This shows it as an aerial. The house itself sits on a lot that's slightly under 6,000 square feet. It has frontage on South Street, which is where the front of the building is oriented towards, and a secondary elevation that faces South Street on the west. This shows that the zoning of the property is zoned R2, and this is fairly common in the central part of Salina. It allows for single-family residences and duplexes. This was converted to a duplex, though the time period that changeover happened is uncertain for us. This shows a site plan of the site. It does have two driveways, one off of South, one off of 9th Street, but no accessory buildings remain on the lot. The building is a Homestead L, so it's slightly L-shaped. It has a full-width front porch and a smaller one-story enclosed porch. It does have a secondary entrance on 9th Street, which may have, I believe, goes to the basement, but it did serve as a duplex under the last use. We believe that's been vacated for about a year. This shows a 1985 photograph of the house. This was done back when the Historic Resources Inventory was done. Likely the reason this was considered a member of that inventory was its sweeping extended roof line that sits there on the right-hand side, as well as a distinctive diamond cut pattern in its gable ends facing both north and to the west. It does have a full-width porch. This shows that those supports were present in 1985. The next photograph shows its present condition. You can see the driveway ends at roughly the house on the left-hand side. The lot itself is fairly overgrown, but what is just noticeable on this is the condition of the front porch, which is in a poor shape, and that's been due to probably lack of proper drainage as well as some settling. On the next photograph is a close-up of the porch. This is fairly common when gutters and downspouts aren't maintained, but this has also led to some damage on the underlying structure as well. This is a view from the southwest and shows the rear porch as well as the secondary entrance on the west side of the building. The extended roof carries down over the front porch and also has a diamond cut pattern, a dormer, which is fairly distinctive in this location. The condition of the rear porch is relatively poor, and some of the siding on the house is eroded as well. Another view on the south elevation of the house showing that while the exterior of the structure is pretty maintained, it is under attack by some of the nearby vegetation, and this definitely leads to damage of the siding. Our next photograph shows the east side of the elevation. In this case, it does show that there is some overgrowth there that's affecting the structure. It does mask some of the condition of the foundation, which we'll see later. This is the west elevation of the house. There is a secondary entrance here, as well as you can see some of the foundation. The house itself has a full brick foundation with a basement and smaller crawl space on that. The reason that you're here today is that our building services division did identify the house as having some structural problems and did inspect the property earlier this this year for its physical condition. They did identify that there is some failure of the brick foundation, which is probably more apparent in the next photographs. In this case, the mortar is almost completely missing on some of the foundation, and where that mortar is left, there are some efforts to replace the bricks there, but the house itself is actually settled free from the underlying foundation, so it is in a precarious situation, and there is some displacement of the house from the edge of the foundation itself. The next photograph is the south portion of the structure that shows the brick foundation. This is primarily a lot of soil moisture getting in there, as well as exterior erosion causing this, but it has led to a fairly serious condition. And this is a closer detail of the foundation and entrance into the rear porch there, which has some lattice that does mask some of the remainder of that foundation. Our building services staff inspected the house on April 21st, 2016, and at that time determined that the house was in an unsafe and dangerous condition, and that most of the mortar and the crawl space brick was missing or deteriorated. They did notice that the full depth foundation wall had bowed 3 to 5 inches, and that the covered deck and joists and footing for the front porch are failing. And without that foundation underpinning of the building, the structure was likely to experience failure or give way. Based on the condition of the structure, the property was placed on the city's 2016 dangerous structures list. It was secured and is vacant at this particular point. The utilities have been shut off. Voluntary action was requested from the property owner to repair the structure. Under the program, if the property owner is unable to accomplish satisfactory repair, the City Commission does progress to a public meeting where it is considered by the City Commission. That happened on June 13, 2016, and a resolution was adopted directing the owner of 315 West South and 4 other property owners to either repair or remove their structures. In this case, the applicant's contractor, Charles Maltby, submitted a demolition permit request in May 26 this year. During review of the application, it was determined that this property was a conservation district property. This means that it must be reviewed and approved if there's any proposal to take down the structure. So this certificate of appropriateness application was submitted on June 28th, and a request to allow the demolition and removal of the residential structure, associated foundation, and driveways on the property. The applicant states that the structure is in a deteriorated condition, and the cost to repair and rehabilitate the remainder of the structure, particularly the basement and foundation, would likely exceed the value of the structure, which is $31,380. Following demolition, the lot would be infilled and maintained in a mobile condition as a grassy lot until future development occurs. Some of the analysis we've placed in the report indicates that although this is a duplex structure and is zoned for that in the R2 district, there isn't quite enough room to accommodate 4 vehicles off the street and have a house of any size. So it would be difficult if the structure was removed to construct a new duplex, and a single family home would be more likely. On the rest of our report, the applicant purchased the duplex in 2005. The seriousness of the foundation settlement and displacement was not brought to his attention until recently, but he has agreed to remove the structure and has hired a demolition contractor. While the structure may not represent immediate threat to public health or safety, vacated buildings often deteriorate at a faster rate, and they can have a blotting effect on neighboring properties. The original structure has elements of design, detailing, and materials of craftsmanship to make it representative of the Homestead L, but the integrity of the walls and trim has eroded over time, and it would take a significant investment to reconstruct the basement foundation as well as these details. The applicant states that the surrounding streetscape would not be negatively affected by removal of the structure. but the loss of a building in its present condition at this permanent location would probably benefit the look of the neighborhood, as would reconstruction of a new residence on the lot. The loss of representative homes in Salina's Central District is unfortunate, and this has been caused in this general neighborhood by expansion of churches as well as the Salina Medical Campus. The staff does not believe that the current zoning allows or serves as any kind of impediment to reuse of the lot as a single-family dwelling. Any new development proposed for the site would be reviewed for conformance with the existing zoning and building codes. Staff would request that the applicant provide some detail on whether he's received any cost estimates on what it would take to repair and rebuild the foundation on the home, as well as some of the other exterior features to bring that into a habitable shape. Noting that he believes it's too expensive to renovate and lease the property due to the house's overall size and limited parking on the site. The owner also asserts there would be an economic hardship, and that should be an important consideration in the Heritage Mission's deliberation. It would be useful to have cost estimates from a building contractor to support the applicant's assertions that it's not financially or feasible. And they would be cost prohibitive to renovate the structure. Following any additional information presented today by the applicant, you would have 4 options and possibly a 5th to approve the demolition request based on the findings and conclusions noted in the staff report. This would be supported by any additional evidence presented today. Approve the demolition request subject to conditions deemed appropriate by the board for its the demolition or removal. If you believe there's not sufficient information today, you could postpone this application. There is a clause in our Heritage Conservation Ordinance where you can delay the evaluation of a demolition request for up to a year, but in that case, generally, those properties are not as far along on the demolition of dangerous structures as this particular one is. As you noted in our packet, the zoning resolution for this property on the dangerous structures list does have an aggressive target date on where this house can be repaired or whether it must be removed, so that should be a consideration. You could defer a decision for the demolition if that is your choice, and you could deny the demolition request at this time, making finding that the standards for demolition of the conservation properties haven't been sufficiently met. Should the Heritage Commission approve those last 2 alternatives, 4 and 5, the property owner could file an appeal of that decision to the City Commission. Staff would recommend that the applicant provide some additional documentation, even if those are verbal estimates on cost estimates for repairing and reconstructing the house. And if the Commission approves alternatives 1 or 2, there are several conditions we would ask be placed on the demolition. That the demolition include removal of the house, basement, driveway, and the cleanup of the site, and all grading necessary to return the property to a mowable, maintainable lot, so that once the structure is removed, the lot itself is maintained and not overgrown, and also that the lot be seeded and cared for until there is a proposal to redevelop on the lot. So at this point, staff would be glad to answer any questions the Commission may have, and the applicant is also here today to answer questions.
I'm assuming that the appraisal by the Saline County Appraiser's Office is based on current condition, not necessarily location and comparables, correct?
That is correct. Generally, they will lower that on the physical condition of the house, right. And the $31,000 is for the structure itself. The lot separately is $13,000.
Okay. So if the house was improved, what would it potentially be worth if it was brought up to code and made habitable? What would the property be worth at that point?
Well, if we look at homes nearby along South 9th Street, generally those are generally between 70 and 90,000, depending on the size. I think that would be a comparable amount. This particular house does have some additional access to it, but I think those would be probably good estimate numbers to compare to.
So, assuming 90,000, you do a $25,000 foundation and another $30,000 or $40,000 in renovation work, you could potentially break even if you were to sell it and save the property.
Certainly, there are other factors probably to take in on that because of the amount of renovation that may take, but I think that's accurate.
That it could be renovated and sold for
likely the same amount as an investment.
Right.
We don't know ahead of time on the seriousness of the basement foundation issue,
right.
But
well, I'm basing this on an assumption that you'd rebuild it completely.
yes, okay.
So at this point, we have no estimate on what the cost of the renovation would be. You wouldn't know that till you got into it, probably, maybe.
Do you have
just verbal estimates, and 25 to 35,000 is kind of
for the basement, and then for the rest of the property?
What's that?
And what's the square footage of the rest of the property?
Of the house?
Yes, sir.
Tony, could you come up to the microphone, please? Sure, thank you.
Honestly, I don't know. I think maybe
1,000.
1,500 square feet. Sound right?
I think that's accurate.
It's probably a little generous, but yes.
You've owned the property since 2005?
Yeah.
That's 11 years. I actually disagree with the findings that says the property has not suffered from willful neglect as evidence of the following in A, B, C, D. Willful neglect acts by the owner or tenant that leads to the deterioration of the building or structure. B, failure to perform normal maintenance and repairs. C, failure to diligently solicit and retain tenants. And failure to secure. D, failure to secure and board the building and structure if vacant. Well, particularly A and B. If you've owned that place 11 years, it's obvious by looking at the photos that it has not been maintained for the last 11 years. And so we're here today trying to basically get you off the hook because you've let this property run down. And I have a real problem with that. And so
Yeah, I'll be the first to admit that I'm not a property manager. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I don't think I collected rent from anyone in those 11 years. And I don't have any excuses, but
is this the only property you own?
Yeah.
The
Well, I
rental,
own.
only rental property you
Yes.
own? Is it your first rental property?
Yes.
Is it going to be your last rental property?
Obviously. Yeah.
I mean, if the only thing I could see is if we were to allow a demolition, that anything that we rebuilt should look like that property. We should take photographs, measurements, and rebuild a home.
We're a long way from that.
I know that we're a long way from that. But I'm just saying that it's. I was looking over the history of the owner. I mean, there's a significant history, family history, for Salina here, and it's a shame to see this disappear.
I have a question on the physical property itself, but looking at these charts, it looks like a portion of that's been torn off and provided to the house that faces 8th Street.
8th or 9th?
8th Street, the one to the east.
Oh.
When you look at the overhead chart, there's a portion of that lot that's connected to this. When you look at the overhead photograph, you see that's a backyard and outbuilding of some kind there.
On that, it's a partial lot, and it's roughly the north 90 feet of a lot. But
Well, that's my question. Who owns that house on 8th Street, do you know?
It's sold recently, but it is a lot that has been both a rental and a single-family home. I think presently it's a single-family home.
It was just sold by Reverend Benjamin Thomas and family. They just moved to Minnesota, so.
But it does encompass the remainder of that lot, and you'll see a detached garage as well as a backyard and garden area that kind of takes up the eastern portion of that lot. And that property line does jog and differ as it goes down that block between 8th Street and 9th Street. The backyards are not even.
Your space, it's been vacant for a year?
Yeah, I think over a year. I think
Over a year.
I think 2 or 3 years.
Kind of the way I look at rental properties is that I wouldn't ask anybody to live in a property that I wouldn't live in. And obviously, this place is probably not nearly as nice a property that you live in, or has, and I would assume that your home is maintained much better than this home has been. And because we could go down this road forever, John. All you have to do is buy a property. If you want to get it torn down, just let it go to pot, and then sooner or later, the city will come by and tell you to tear it down, and before you know it, we don't have any homes left. You know, that's all. It's that simple.
Well, as far as the architectural significance of it, are there any other homes that around Salina that are similar, that reflect the same features, would you say?
It's fairly unique for a Homestead L in the roof line that it has and some of the decorative wood trim that it has. There are other examples that are roughly configured the same but do have different trim and that. So you'll see areas of fish shingles that belong to Queen Anne's, but having this mixture on a regular homestead building is unusual.
Is it known if there have been any significant additions since 1902? Is this the original? Is this as close to the original design as it was?
We believe it is. We've compared that with an older Sanborn map that shows that it's changed very little since the 1930s.
I will say, if you look at it as a piece of architectural significance, it doesn't have any, as far as I'm concerned. I mean,
Architectural significance?
Huh?
Well,
That's why it was designated.
well, that's why it was originally placed on the roster. Well, I think the salt roof is definitely, and I think there is something unique to it. I mean, it's seen better days, but I think it's.
During the original survey, the Heritage Mission also relied on the state preservation staff to do the analysis for the building. So there are roughly 235 individual structures around town, but generally it's not the Heritage Mission alone who picked those out. It was a historic preservation staff as well as a consultant that worked together. So.
I mean, in terms, I've looked at this property for a while. The foundation is a mess, but I can't see that there's any actual. Does the city engineer actually look at the actual structure to determine if there's structural deterioration to the point where it cannot be saved?
That's our impression, that there was an inspection where they did some identification on mainly the displacement of the foundation, where it is kind of bowing out away from the structure 3 to 5 inches. And
Right, the foundation is.
yes.
Right, but I'm talking about the structure above the foundation. The windows seem to be, there doesn't seem to be any sag. The structure seems square above foundation. I'm just, in terms of criteria for saving a structure, there's a lot of cosmetic damage, but I'm wondering if there's actual physical structural damage that's irreparable beneath that. I mean, obviously, you know, it could certainly use paint, but in shingles or siding, but the actual structure itself seems, from the images and from driving by, it seems square from a carpenter's viewpoint? Is it something that could be lifted and then rebuilt, or is it inside, is it structurally falling apart? We don't have any interior images.
No, we don't have the data for the interior of the structure. Most of the structural concern was basically on the front porch, as well as just the lack of support there. But we don't see a lot of buckling or physical damage on the wood frame itself. It's hard to tell without having some internal look at that.
No? Any other comments from,
Not for staff. I'd have some questions for Mr. Dong, but.
okay? I think that would be appropriate.
Staff has requested some additional detail, written reports regarding the cost to make the repairs that everybody's asking about. Have you got that?
No, I don't. I didn't realize that I needed to get that together, but
On the 25,000, did you get that from a licensed contractor or someone in the building trades?
it was Earl Kinderconnect.
Mhm.
I assume he's licensed. He does. Yeah, I think he's
Yes.
licensed. Yeah.
Mhm.
Is the, I don't know if I'm going to ask, but is the property mortgaged at the moment, or is it?
No,
That's free and clear.
no.
This might sound like a stupid question, but why'd you buy it in the first place?
I was. A realtor said it was a good. I was told it was a good investment. And clearly not.
So,
Well, it could be.
what did you say, Tony?
I was told it was a good investment, and turns out not so much.
And you said you haven't collected a lot of rent out of it?
I haven't collected anything. I've had
I mean,
people that work for me and stuff like that, and and it's like, yeah, you can, go live there, just pay me if you can, and nobody ever pays. So
But it's not mortgaged.
no.
So in theory, it's possible if you put 60,000 in it, you could sell it for 90 and make a $30,000 profit and be out of it. Possibly.
I bought it for $40,000 in 2005, and I'm almost positive you're gonna have to tear out all the electrical and the all whatever goes into
Plumbing,
fixing
electrical,
fixing one of those
HVAC,
things. Yeah.
Cool.
And
Until we get some written estimates, it's hard to make that judgment.
Yeah. Can we make that as a proposal?
Mm-hmm.
Just so that we have a cost analysis to see if it would, and it would certainly benefit you. I mean, I'm sure you've written this off on your taxes as depreciation. If not, you should fire your accountant, but
yeah,
sorry. Yeah,
it's beyond me. Yeah.
okay.
I think that sounds like a,
Okay, I'll make that a formal proposal then, that we,
Item 3 of the
item,
recommendation.
where is that? Item, what page is that, sir?
Page 9.
Page 9.
Sure.
Forgive me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that, I'm gonna make a proposal that we go with, recommendation 3 is postpone till we can get some, additional information on the cost of renovation and repair, to determine if it's, economically feasible before we release this.
is there a second?
I'd second that.
Mm.
I
On
think
the
the
motion,
motion says we should have a specific date and time for this.
yes.
Yeah, you need a date.
Can you do it in 30 days?
Get a quote,
Get it.
and you want a quote that
In writing
to
from
get
a, from a licensed contractor?
habitable.
Part of this motion, we need to establish a date.
Habitable and
Needs to be
restored
habitable
to-
and to the point that if it's gonna be a duplex, it needs to meet all the city codes too. Habitable and city codes for being a rental property for duplex are two
Well-
different things.
Okay.
No, I would make the proposal to return it to a single-family dwelling.
Well, that's it.
So that would, because that would make it sellable.
What is it zoned for, John?
R2, I think.
It's R2, so it could be a duplex, but there isn't really sufficient parking area there to probably make that feasible.
But it was at this point.
Yeah, it's pre-existing non-conforming property, and it was last a duplex, yes.
Well, John, I might just weigh in on that. The indication of whether the city codes have identified a property as single-family or duplex, if permits had been obtained to convert this to a duplex, then it would have a dual address, one address for each unit. The fact that it has a single address tends to indicate that it was designed and intended as a single-family dwelling, and if it was converted, it wasn't converted through any permit process.
It's probably going to be cheaper to put it back to a single-family dwelling than a
That would be my,
It's
that's the
originally
basis of
designed.
my
But the question
proposal.
is, if we're going to postpone this, we need to give him a date and time to be back here with that information.
I'd say
I would propose that we'd set her for 16th or 23rd of September. It's another Friday afternoon at 4.
Sure. Yeah, 'cause my proposal was based on making it a single-family dwelling. I think
So
that
you
would
tell
help.
me which was better for you, Tony.
Okay, let me look here on the
That's a little
calendar.
over a month. Is that enough time?
What 2 dates did you say, John?
Either 16th or 23rd. If he
You
needs
don't
more
wanna go-
time, we can put it in
He and I
October.
don't want to go the 23rd because we have Martina McBride on the
Sure.
23rd, and you're going to be busy that day.
Good.
Martina McBride, and he's going to be busy that day.
Yeah, September 16th would be all right.
Okay, how are we with the wording? Do you need a clarification or, of that
I
was a
think-
motion, right? Okay,
Yes.
South Street rather than 9th Street would be easier for
Mhm.
people to access it that way and give a side yard
okay.
or backyard.
Are we legitimate here? We've got a second and,
Yes.
okay, so let's vote on the motion as stated. And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
And that will carry us with the pending the motion from the city, right? They're not going to start moving against Mr. Dong because we've kicked this can a little bit down the road, right?
I might ask my director on the mechanism there, but yes, the city commissioner would work with that.
Okay. We want to make sure that we're protecting Mr. Dong too.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have, I think John wants to mention the preservation conference.
Sure. We did receive
I'm not sure I
word-
know where it is.
Oh,
Seemed to
many
wanna
of-
open.
it would be that last one there again.
I know, but it doesn't want to open.
Oh, okay. Well, what we have done too is we provide you a copy of an announcement for this year's Kansas Preservation Conference that will be held in Abilene this year on September 28th and 29th. Those are our Wednesdays and Thursdays, so it may not be optimal for some to attend, but it does allow commission members to go and attend the conference, not on both days. They can pick and choose the sessions they want to go with. There is a keynote address and a banquet on the first night, Wednesday night, 28th. And what we are working with is the State Preservation Office does have scholarships for local preservation commissions in various CLGs that they can pay your registration to attend that. So that shouldn't be a deterrent at all. We would just ask for your interest there and telling us which days you might want to attend. We'll try and organize travel, though it's close enough. I think most might prefer just traveling over yourself for those sessions that interest you. But I did want to let you know that that is an option for you, and certainly something to consider. And once you have a decision on that, go ahead and contact us, and we'll work with the Preservation Conference on the registration fee for you.
Looks like you have a lot of time to be thinking about it.
Could you email forward this information via email to us?
I have, yeah, I can. Yeah, I haven't yet. I know some of the other members are on the mailing list. Since you're new here, you didn't receive one, so we'll get that to you. Sure.
Received what yet?
The announcement today came from the Kansas Preservation Alliance through the state nonprofit preservation nonprofit, and they're sponsoring this. So the announcement actually came out today on that, so there wasn't much advance notice.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
And the staff hasn't brought
Anything
any
else?
other matters for you today, so
We do?
I have
No.
not.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you said no?
Mhm.
Okay. Then I declare this meeting adjourned.